Friends, my topic today is Pirkei Avot, Chapter 1, Mishnah 15, the only statement of Shamai brought down in this chapter. I think it's also worthy of noting, we talked about Hillel and Shammai. There's also the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai. This is very unusual that you have only three differences which are mentioned in the Talmud between Hillel and Shammai, but you have over 100 differences, maybe 115 differences between the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai. It's also unusual because the Hillel and Shammai, as I say, live somewhere about 20 before the Common Era to about 20 after, give and take. But the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai, the students of, continue well after the destruction of the Second Temple into the beginning of the 2nd century. And the differences between them, of course, are in different areas. I think it's mentioned as 4 different areas of argumentation, but often the arguments, I think, to somebody standing from the outside seem to be in secondary, even tertiary issues of halakha. Whether to do something first or not, or whether to be standing or to be sitting, like as the Shema, for somebody standing outside of the discussion of halakha, seems to be in secondary issues. Sometimes I wonder, since it goes through the destruction of the Second Temple, if this is sometimes one of the problems of the Jewish people, that we take sometimes minor issues too seriously, things that you argue about. I think somebody once said that in many cases of divorce, the issues seem to be so secondary and so trivial that they wondered why it happened in the first place. So maybe it's the argumentation that is the problem, and maybe less so the issue at hand. And let's just look at Shammai's statement. Shammai says, Asei Toratcha Keva, which means your Torah should be something which is constant. Already this could be understood in different ways, because there is a statement in the that says that in the time to come, a rabbinic statement, that 3 questions are asked of a person after 120 when they reach the world to come. And the first statement looking back in their life was, Kavata itim leTorah. Did you designate times for Torah study? And then, Asakta Pirkei Avot, did you try to bring up a family? And so, Nasata v'natata me'emunah, did you conduct your business activities honestly and justly? There's even actually a place where there's another girsa, another nusach, another edition of these questions where they say, did you look into the secrets of the Torah? And of course, the 4th one of the popular ones is also Tzipita liyeshua. Did you anticipate and wait for the better times, for what we call the Messianic age, the redemption? So again, the 4 things are, did you put the time for Torah study? Was your business transactions done in a way which were ethical? Did you try to bring up a family? And did you try to look for the redemption? Try to make this world a little bit of a better place. So Shammai already says, Asei Toratcha Keva, which could be understood a little bit different. Because Kavata itim leTorah means designating times for Torah study. But making your Torah constant means making it the major part of your day. This is something which, in a book which I'm putting out now called Conversations with Chaim Volozhin, I mentioned because Chaim Volozhin, when he discusses Torah study, he discusses Torah studies for a scholar. And here too, Shammai seems to be discussing Torah study for a scholar. A scholar who has the time for Torah, then the Torah has to be the constant part of your life, the major part. Whereas Chaim Volozhin would say, instead of then designating time for Torah, you have to designate time for the other things that you're going to do, which is not Torah, when Torah is your life. So Asei Toratcha Keva, whether it's understood as designating time for Torah, or whether it's understood as having the main part of your time being for Torah, it has to be something which is constant. Things which are constant are part of your life. Things which are not, are not. There's an interpretation by the Vilna Gaon where he says, Kavata itim Torah, did you designate time for Torah? So he explains the word kavata, like it says in the book of Micah, Haikba adem Elohim. Can a person steal? There's a word kavah, to steal. Can a person steal from God? And here you're stealing the offerings. In other words, kavata itim Torah means not did you designate time for Torah, but did you steal time from Torah, for Torah? In other words, everybody's busy. Everybody's got to make a livelihood. Everybody has what to do. But when it comes to Torah, you have to steal from your scheduled time in order to make time for Torah. That's what the Vilna Gaon says. There's always an excuse. So steal time for Torah. But anyhow, getting back to Shamai, I say Torah Chakev has a bit of a different nuance. Make it a constant. Something which in Rav is a constant. Rashi explains it this way too. Don't just designate time for Torah. Make it a constant. Okay. That's statement number one. Statement number two, Emor me'at, ve'aseh harbe. Do say little, do a lot. The opposite of a politician. Politicians like to talk a lot, do very little. And of course, we vote for them according to what they talk, so they don't have to do anything after. Once you put them in office, why should they do anything? So, Emor me'at ve'aseh harbe. So the also Rashi brings, and it brings an Avot Rabbi Natan, be like the student of Abraham, who says little and does a lot. Because if you remember Abraham, when the three men or angels came to visit him at his tent, he says, "Ekchapat lechem, I'll take some bread and you can eat." And then what did he actually do? He didn't just take bread. He went and he slaughtered sheep and he made cheese and he had a whole festivity, a whole feast for them. So he said little, but he did a lot. He did much more than he actually said he was going to do. That's called emor me'at v'aser debei. Don't be the ones who brag about what you're going to do. Just do. That's what life is all about. V'avei mekabel et kol ha'adam b'sever panim ravot. And by the way, people who brag about what they're going to do, they usually don't. So, yeah. V'avei mekabel et kol ha'adam b'sever panim yafot. And always receive people with a smile. Sever panim means with a nice attitude, but which is Shamai. Shamai was always considered the more strict, but he was more strict when it came to halacha. It's true in the famous case with the potential converts who asked him all these unusual questions, he got rid of them, but it's only because they were asking unusual questions. Shamai, as we know, yes, under promise, over deliver. So Shammai, as we know, was, by the way, by profession, a builder. That's why in the stories of the converts we shoot away, it says that he pushed them away with amat habinyan, which was some device, I guess, for measuring, like a measuring rod, which builders used to use. All our Tanaim, all our scholars of the Mishnah, and our Amoraim all had day jobs. When I say day jobs, it could also be seasonal jobs, like in agriculture, meaning they all had ways through which they profited because they never wanted to profit from the study of Torah, which we mentioned earlier in this chapter where it says, that you're not supposed to use the crown of Torah for personal gain. So let's look again what Shammai says. Make your Torah a constant. The study of Torah, even if it's a minute amount of time in your day, has to be constant because it has to be an axis upon which the rest of the day lies. Whether it's 10 minutes, half an hour, 3 hours, it's got to be a certain axis upon which the rest of the day rotates because it's going to have that effect, that qualitative effect on your life. Asay Torah Chakeva, make it that axis of the day. Second thing is, amor me'at v'aseh harbe. Don't talk a lot, just do. and also receive people with a smile. We can also understand this, by the way, as four levels in dealing with people. Torah is the intellectual. Then you have the verbal, which Shammai was not a big fan of. He said, keep the words to few. Then you have action, which he is a big fan of, do the right thing. And then finally he says, and receive people with a smile, because there's also body language. There's your thought, your speech, your action, and your attitude. And people notice all. You can say one thing, but your attitude might say something different. Can you imagine a parent holding a child like a baby and saying, I love you? That doesn't work. Right? Too far away. It's an attitude, it's an expression. It's the way you treat people, as it says in Mishle and Proverbs, adam. Just like when you look in the water, you see your reflection. So too are human hearts. The way you look, the way you react to a person, they're going to react to you emotionally too. Because the heart is a reflection of your heart, just like your countenance is reflected in the water, the way you look into the water. So people realize these things. So Shammai, first of all, is living in this understanding the human being as a package: thought, speech, action, and attitude, the way we see people, body language. For Shammai, the axis is everything, is the intellect, and therefore the Torah studies the axis upon which everything rests. Speech, he personally was not a big fan of speech. Say what you must say, but he, this of course can be understood in different ways, but it's not about speech, it's about what you do in the end of the day, which is going to have an effect on the world, and your attitude is very important in receiving people. So we have an unusual then statement here of Shammai, which I think also puts Shammai into context too. And even though the halacha follows a Beit Hillel, but it doesn't mean that the laws of Shammai are not important. In fact, there's a statement attributed to the Shalash of Shai Horvitz of Prague of the 16th century, where he says that the fact that the halacha follows Beit Hillel, it's because in Beit Hillel deals more with the real than the ideal. But in futuristic times, the halacha will follow Beit Shammai, because in a certain sense, the ideal, if possible, could overcome the real if you're able to educate the people to reach that level. You have to deal with the real when you're not able to bring the people to a higher level. But good leadership enables the people to also reach a higher level and bring them closer to the ideal. So that's all I wanted to say really about Shammai today. We will continue again we have Mishnah 16, Mishnah 17 of this chapter before we finish Pirkei Avot. And in the meantime, I wish everyone have a safe and healthy day. Shalom, shalom.